Welcome back to the garage, the shed, the unit, the workshop. Not really got a formal name for it yet. It's an exciting day today because the body kit for the Z300S arrives. At some point, all I know is it's between 8 AM and 6 PM, so I'm potentially here for the duration. Lots of tea will be consumed. I thought this would be a good juncture to do a bit of a recap. Break down the two projects, because even I get them confused sometimes. Talk about what's happening next, because there's going to be a big shift in focus now. So much of my time has been focused on getting this car stripped down, what will ultimately be the EV GT. But now that that's done, it's time to get the 300 buttoned up. New body on, new interior, lots of content on that front coming. So let's do a quick recap. Starting in lockdown 2020, my eldest daughter and I built this. What's colloquially known as the 300. What is right now a BMW Z3 converted to electric. Inside it has a Prius inverter at its heart, a Mitsubishi Outlander charger, batteries from a BMW hybrid, and the motor from a Mitsubishi Outlander, one of the two front motors / generator. It's a little bit underpowered, but otherwise very serviceable EV, as you can tell from the fact that I've driven it here today. Limited range, currently about 20, maybe 22, 23 miles, but all of that can change. Now this is known as the 300 because it's going to get a Tribute Automotive Z300S body kit, and that is what arrives today. Having completed the 300, or at least got it on the road with my eldest daughter, I decided that I enjoyed the project so much that I wanted to do another one. And I decided it kind of made sense to have two cars, because let's be honest, projects are never finished. One of them's always going to be off the road. So why not have two DIY EVs, one that can be in the garage while I'm working on it, while the other one's driving me around, and vice versa. And since one's a cabriolet, why not have a hard top as well, so that I've got one for winter and one for summer. Now you'll notice that this car, well, it's barely a car at the moment, but it's also another cabrio, it's another Z3. I like BMWs, I liked working on the Z3, I liked the way it was designed, I liked the fact that you could unbolt the body panels and put a new body on. And so having decided to do the Z300S body for the first one, I decided I'd do the ZGT body, another Tribute Automotive body, for this one. So I picked up this car, an MOT failure both on emissions and on rust, for about £650. And if you've been following, you'll know I've been stripping it down and getting it ready to be used, first of all as a development mule for the 300, but ultimately this will be a GT car. A bigger drivetrain than the first one. It's going to have the a gearbox motor, which I've shown you in a previous video. We'll leave lots of space in the engine bay for batteries. It's going to have a 100-mile range. It's going to have a hard top. It's going to be slightly, very differently styled. And yeah, but this is the long-term project. Not going to be doing anything much on this other than getting the drivetrain running in the near future. All focus on the 300. Once that's done and back on the road in its new guise with its uprated drivetrain and everything else, then attention turns back to this one. I'm going to get it completely stripped, up on a rotisserie, weld up the holes in the sills and clean up the underside, refurbish all of the suspension components, and start to fit it out with the bigger drivetrain. Again, different interior, another sort of fully custom project in many ways. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to read this. My handwriting is famously awful, but it's a good aide-memoire for me as I talk you through it. This isn't an exhaustive list of all the things that need doing on the 300, but it's a pretty good start. So let's start from the outside and work down to the details. First of all, the body swap. So the body arrives today. That's a series of fiberglass body panels, which mostly bolt on to here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use what will ultimately be the GT as the mule to get all those tests fitted, to get them all shaped up, to work out some of the details I'll go through before we swap them over to the 300. And that's why getting this stripped down has been so important. So front, rear panels, side skirts, that all arrives today at some point. And then once that's on, we've got to work out things like lights. It comes with semi-cutouts for the front lights, but nothing at the back. We're going to have to do some modifications, some fiberglassing, some cutouts to put in the rear lights, which I selected last night. They're on their way. I'll show you when those arrive. Then we're going to work out number plates. There's no obvious place for the number plate on the front of the Z300S body. You can stick one on, maybe have one that folds up inside the sort of the grille. Lots of different options there. Need to work out. So I'll probably take the number plates off the bumpers or off the back and front of the GT and use those for mocking up. Particularly complicated by the fact that I want to hide the charging ports, multiple charging ports, behind the rear number plate, so that we can have that flip down and just keep the body nice and clean so that flips down for charging. Got to work out what we're going to do for wing mirrors. I have an idea. Because I'm going for this retro futuristic look, I'd really like wing mirrors that fold automatically, but there aren't obvious swaps for the BMW or from the BMW range that do that. So I'm looking at a variety of other manufacturers' wing mirrors that might fit nicely with the body style. But before we fit those, we need to repair the doors. One of the doors on the 300 is rusty and has a dent in it. So what we'll probably do is swap the doors off this car, off the GT, onto the 300 temporarily, while we mock up the wing mirrors and also repair those bits of damage before it can go for paint or wrap. I'm going to change the wheels. I much prefer the wheels that I shifted the other day from the GT over to the 300. They're much nicer, but they're not the wheels I want finally. I'm thinking BMW Style 42 wheels. Check those out with a custom center cap. I think those have got a nice sort of retro look, that semi sort of wire wheel inspired look, but without looking totally retro, and would suit the retro futuristic style of that car. Let me know what you think in the comments. Charging points, as I mentioned, we've got to make cutouts for those in the back. I'm hoping once we get the body, we'll be able to see that there's enough space to fit the charging ports, because they do come some way inside, they come some way through wherever they're mounted, that we can fit those without losing too much boot space. That'll also be a good place to put at some point the extra junction box and contactor box for rapid DC charging. Initially CHAdeMO, ultimately maybe CCS. And then once we've done all that, there'll be some trimming out to do. Not all the trim survived very well, the dismantling of the 300. So it's going to need some fixing, new clips. The seals are a bit off, so there's definitely a leak on the passenger side of the 300 in heavy rain. So all of that will need trimming out as a final part of the exterior. And then we move to the interior. One of the next videos you will see is me going and picking up and bringing back here and walking around the seats that I want to put in the 300. I won't tell you what those are yet. You can see those in that video. They are heated though. Currently that has no heated seats and no heating, which is something that I'll need to add to here. All of that will need plumbing in, and because they're from a different manufacturer, that's going to require some fettling. I've got no instruments in the car at the moment apart from a speedometer, so definitely going to need to fix those. I want to get some warning lights. I'd like to have a light that shows when the contactor is closed, or rather goes off when the contactors are closed, so that I know that the car's ready to drive. I'd obviously like, rev counter would be nice. Fuel gauge is probably the most important. All of those things need to get worked out on the interior there. I'm also working, as you may have seen, on a custom center console. I want a double DIN head unit in there so that I can get data from the instruments under the bonnet, but also sat-nav, entertainment, etc. So I'm working on the 3D printed replacements for the original BMW parts that will drop into the existing center console It can be trimmed out and dropped in there. And then finally, purely cosmetic thing, the door cards. Not a big fan of the ones in the 300 at the moment, sort of checkered cloth, not very pretty. So either retrim those, get those retrimmed, maybe change the door handles in them for something a bit cooler, but that might come down the line. Suspension, that car clonks every time it goes over a pothole or over a speed bump. I redid with entirely new components most of the front suspension apart from the front sway bar, anti-roll bar bushes, so those need replacing. And on the rear, everything needs replacing, it needs completely rebushing. But actually I think the shocks and springs probably need redoing as well. It was cheaper to put on a very cheap set of coilovers rather than replace the shocks with OEM parts when I did the 300, and I was very much on a tight budget then. I'm on a tight budget again now, but when I've got the money, I'll probably put OEM parts back on there or a much better set of upgraded shocks and springs. If you hear noise in the background, the shop next door to my garage is now opened, so that's the condensers for the fridges going. Drivetrain, as you know, there's a motor upgrade going in there. It's not quick enough, so you've seen me working on the adapter plate and you'll see me working on the coupler for that. That then needs a new mounting frame that not only supports the motor and the other end of the gearbox, but provides the foundations for mounting the battery box, the inverter, the actually when it's redone, the charger, the power steering pump, the vacuum pump, all of that needs a frame to mount in. I'm going to make that from scratch, make a whole new one of those to go with the new motor. I want to wrap the noisy parts, which is the power steering pump and the vacuum pump, in sound deadening. There's a new battery box going there. You've seen me making that. That should get rid of some of the clunking, because I suspect some of the clunking comes from the existing battery box and its lid that isn't very well secured. A new high voltage junction box to allow us to mate up the two battery packs, the two parallel battery packs, front and rear. That'll be going in. And I'm moving the charger as well. And then ultimately a rear battery box to give us twice the range. But that may be a little bit down the line. Then we've got our electrical. And as I mentioned, I need to add heating onto this. I need to automate charging. It's very manual at the moment. I still have to plug a laptop in order to charge a 300. The reason that's been quite slow is because I'm not getting any CAN bus communication from or to my inverter, which means that I can't close the contactors to connect the battery to the charger remotely at the moment. I probably need to find a way around that or pull the inverter out for a while and do some diagnosis on the bench to work out why that's not working. But ultimately, I should be able to just plug a cable in, the car wakes up, charges until it's full, and then shuts down again. Need to sort out dials, as I mentioned. Need to probably use the fuel sender from this to work out what sort of resistance or voltages I need to be sending back to the fuel gauge in the 300. Unfortunately, I threw the sender away from there before I'd worked that out, or the sender from that one away before I'd worked that out. The central locking's not working perfectly on there. Intermittent fault on the passenger door, and actually remote central locking's failed altogether. I want to get that fixed. Integrated phone charger. I actually have one in there, which I'll do a video on at some point. I've got a wireless phone charger. Hang on, Vince is here. I'll be back. Vince has come and gone. Just to finish up there. Electrical, automate charging, sort out dials, particularly fuel gauge, central locking, phone charger, wireless phone charger that sits in quite nicely in the new center console, heating, which requires a whole load of stuff, bit of electronics, bit of controls, bit of plumbing, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, as you can see, plenty to do on this, which is why that's the focus now. Bit of a pause on the GT. I say that, I'm so excited about the big motor that's sat over there. At some point, I'm likely to get that up on the bench, bring the inverter in, spare battery pack in, and start having a play with that. But for now, focus on the 300. And while I'm waiting for the new body to arrive, I'm going to start getting the interior out of the GT so that I can stick it in the 300 while I sort out the new interior for 300 while it's in the GT. I'm really not doing a good job of making this very clear, am I? That's magic, that'll do.
You like that?
That's great, yeah. Well, there we go. One big pile of Tribute Automotive Z300S. That's going to take some unwrapping. I'll set the camera up, do a bit of a time lapse. First, I might go and grab a sandwich. All unwrapped. First impressions. Feels very solid, very well put together. The shape is beautiful. Quite a lot of finishing to do. You can see around the edges here, there's some lips, there's going to be some sanding, some filling all around these arches here. So once the body's on, there's going to be a lot of little bits of tidying up. You can see the boot lid is on its hinges. A lot of water got in. This has clearly been outside for a while, so I'll need to get rid of that water. I don't know if that's yeah. My packet of bolts for screwing it all on is rather wet. I'll leave that to dry out. Same around here. Fair bit of filling and sanding, but that shouldn't be unexpected on a fiberglass body kit. Lots of work to make it perfect. Overall though, really happy. I think this is going to look absolutely awesome. That'll wrap it up for today. Some really good progress. Our beautiful Z300S body kit from Tribute Automotive has arrived. Got the interior out of what will ultimately be the GT, but for now is the development mule for the 300. Next steps, I'll be off to pick up a new interior for the 300 tomorrow, so you'll see that in the next video. Be interested to see what you think about my choices there. And need to get a friend in to help me start fitting this body up over there. Lots still to do on the motor upgrades. I mean, you saw my list of things, my to-do list for the 300. Lots still to do, full stop. So if you do enjoy this stuff, if you do want to see me making more mistakes, having more fun mucking around with old BMWs, converting them to electric and rebodying them, then please do like and subscribe. I'll stick a subscribe link up here and a playlist link for the 300 to date down here. And please do leave your feedback in the comments as well. Really enjoy engaging with everybody. Thanks for watching.